At my birthday dinner, Mom whispered to Dad. Well, everyone's here. Tell your son to change her locks tonight. An hour later, my brother came back pale and said the police had sealed my apartment. That's when I found out. The break-in wasn't random. It was planned by my own mother. And the reason? Hidden crimes, forged papers, and a truth she buried under my name. My name is Ava Kincaid. And this is how I ended her control forever. Rain streaked across the tall windows of Mariner's Table, the quiet, waterfront restaurant Ava Kincaid had chosen for her birthday dinner. The candlelight reflected against the glass, mixing with the city's evening glow, a blend of silver rain and blurred headlights that made Seattle look softer than it really was. For once, she had hoped tonight might be different. No lectures, no subtle jabs, no family politics wrapped in smiles. Across the table sat her parents, Margaret and Richard Kincaid, and her brother Noah, with his wife Emily at his side. The conversation was polite enough to sound civilized, yet tight enough to cut glass. Ava could sense the undercurrent, the same one that haunted every family gathering since she'd moved out on her own. Her mother's laughter rang false, the sound of crystal cracking. Ava caught the brief, private exchange, Margaret leaning toward her husband, whispering something through a forced smile. Richard nodded, his expression unreadable under the warm light. Ava didn't hear every word, but she saw the motion of Margaret's lips. While everyone's here, tell Noah to go change the locks at her apartment. The words slithered through the air like smoke, faint but unmistakable. For a moment, Ava thought she'd misheard. Her fingers tightened around her fork. She kept her eyes on the cake being served, pretending to be preoccupied, but her pulse had already begun to thrum beneath her skin. Richard murmured something back, too soft to catch, but his tone carried obedience, not hesitation. Ava's father never questioned Margaret. Noah stood from his chair, excusing himself casually, car keys jingling in his hand. "I'll be right back," he said. Ava's throat tightened. He wasn't subtle, he'd never been. She smiled anyway, masking the sting of betrayal with composure. "Don't forget to grab dessert when you come back," she said lightly. The others chuckled. Only her mother looked faintly annoyed at Ava's calmness, as though control slipping from her grip was somehow a personal insult. When Noah left, the table resumed its polite clatter of forks and murmured conversation. Ava stared at her plate, her reflection caught in the silver knife beside it. The image of herself looked distant, unfamiliar. She wondered how many more birthdays would play out the same way, decorated in tension, disguised as tradition. An hour passed before Noah returned. The restaurant's laughter quieted in slow motion as he approached. His face had gone pale, nearly colorless under the candlelight. The chatter dimmed. He leaned toward his mother and whispered something that made Margaret's expression shift from irritation to alarm. Her voice carried just enough for everyone to hear. "Well, did you do it?" Noah swallowed hard. His eyes darted to Ava before answering. "Mom, there's police tape around her door." Ava froze. The clinking of cutlery halted mid-motion. Even the background hum of conversation from nearby tables seemed to retreat. Richard frowned. "What kind of joke is that?" "It's not a joke," Noah stammered. "There's an officer outside. He said no one's allowed in." Something happened. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The air felt dense, metallic. Then Ava's phone buzzed against the tabletop, its vibrations slicing through the silence. An unknown number flashed on the screen. She hesitated before answering the text. "Ms. Kincaid, this is Officer Caleb Grant with Seattle PD. Please contact us immediately regarding your apartment." Her breath caught. Margaret reached across the table. "Ava, what is going on?" But Ava was already standing. The legs of her chair scraped the floor, the sound sharp as a blade. "I don't know," she said quietly, grabbing her purse. "But I'm going to find out." She didn't look back as she left the restaurant. Outside, the rain had thickened into a steady curtain, blurring the city lights. Each step toward her car felt heavier, each breath shallower. The world beyond her family's polished smiles was beginning to show its cracks. By the time Ava reached her apartment complex on Maple Street, the scene was awash of red and blue reflections. Two patrol cars idled by the curb, their lights casting rhythmic shadows across the soaked pavement. A yellow strip of police line "Do Not Cross" fluttered across the stairwell. A uniformed officer approached. "Ma'am, are you Ava Kincaid?" "Yes." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "What happened?" He checked his clipboard. "We received a report of a possible break-in. Your door was forced open, but nothing appears stolen. We've secured the unit pending investigation." "A break-in?" she repeated, disbelief tightening her chest. "Who would?" "Do you know who might have access to your keys?" he interrupted gently. Ava hesitated, rain dripping from her coat. There was only one possible answer, one she could hardly say aloud. "My brother, Noah Kincaid." The officer's pen froze mid-note. "And why would your brother break into your apartment?" "Because," she said bitterly, "my mother told him to." He lifted his gaze. "Could you clarify that?" "She asked him to change my locks tonight," Ava said, her tone controlled but trembling. "Without my consent. He must have found something before the police did." The officer, his badge red Grant, paused, studying her. Before he could respond, his radio crackled with a burst of static. "Unit 3, we've got a match on the prints inside. Sending ID now." Grant's brows furrowed as he listened to the voice on the other end. When the reply came through, his expression shifted from concentration to unease. He turned back to Ava. "You might want to sit down for this." Ava sank onto the curb, the cold from the wet pavement seeping through her jeans. Her heart beat unevenly, echoing the flashing patrol lights. Grant crouched beside her. "The fingerprints inside your apartment don't belong to you or your brother." She stared. "Then whose are they?" He turned the tablet toward her. On the screen glowed a name, Ethan Hale. Ava's pulse spiked. "He's my landlord's nephew. Handles maintenance." Grant nodded. "He's currently in custody. We found surveillance footage showing him entering your apartment last night using a copied key. He's been under investigation for similar unlawful entries in the area." A shiver crawled up her spine. "Then what was he doing in mine?" Grant hesitated, glancing toward the building. "You might want to see that yourself." Inside, the hallway smelled of rain and dust. Her apartment door hung slightly open. The lock splintered. Grant led the way, careful not to step beyond the marked tape. The living room looked untouched, furniture in place, lights off, except for one detail that turned Ava's stomach. Every framed photo of her and her 6-year-old son, Liam, lay face down. Grant pointed toward the coffee table. A single envelope rested there, plain white, no markings. "That was found on your couch," he said. Ava's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a printed message, each word crisp and deliberate. "Tell your mother. The truth always finds its way home." Her throat went dry. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered. "Tell your mother. The truth always finds its way home." Her throat went dry. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered. "We'll run forensics," Grant said. "Do you recognize the phrasing?" Ava stared at the note again. The mechanical precision of the printout didn't hide its intent. It felt personal, targeted. The phrase "tell your mother" sank deep. She looked up slowly. "He wasn't trying to steal anything," she murmured. "He was delivering something." Grant frowned. "Delivering what?" "A message," Ava said, almost to herself. "Not for me, for her." For the first time that night, fear edged out anger. The following morning, the sky was a dull gray wash over the city. Ava hadn't slept. The note replayed in her mind on a loop. 3 missed calls from her mother blinked on her phone, along with one from an unknown number. When she finally listened to the voicemail, Grant's calm voice filled the room. "Ms. Kincaid, we've confirmed that Ethan Hale was paid by an anonymous transfer last week. The funds trace back to an account registered under your mother's name." The phone nearly slipped from her hand. Her knees gave slightly as she braced herself against the counter. Margaret Kincaid, the woman who prided herself on control, on appearances, had hired the man who broke into her daughter's home. Ava called Grant back immediately. "You're sure?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "The transfer was labeled as maintenance services, but given the timing and that note, it looks deliberate. We believe your mother was trying to retrieve something. Ava gave a hollow laugh. Retrieve what? She already owns everything she's ever wanted. But then her laughter faded as realization dawned. The box. In the attic of her apartment's storage unit sat a box she'd found the previous month, marked in her father's handwriting. Business records. Inside were property deeds signed by both her parents, but none appeared in tax filings. Grant's tone sharpened. Miss Kincaid, does your family have any history of financial disputes? History? Ava's voice lowered. My mother's made a legacy out of them. Within the hour, she sat across from Grant again at the precinct. An evidence folder lay between them. Photos of the note, the splintered door, and the bank transaction record. He slid them toward her. Would you like to press charges against your mother? Ava's gaze lingered on the folder. The word mother still had a sacred edge to it, but the woman behind it didn't. Not yet, she said finally. I want to know what she's hiding first. Grant nodded. Then you'll need to talk to her carefully. Ava gave a humorless smile. Careful is the only language my mother speaks. She left the station with rain prickling her skin, the clouds heavy above. Every drop against her coat felt like an echo of a memory, each one whispering that the truth was far from over. That evening, she typed a short message and sent it to her mother. Dinner. My place. 7 p.m. No games this time. The reply came within seconds. Fine. But I hope you're ready for the truth. Ava exhaled, staring at the screen. For the first time, she truly was. At precisely 7, the knock came. Light, controlled, deliberate, like everything Margaret Kincaid did. When Ava opened the door, her mother stood there in an ivory coat, her posture immaculate, her expression unreadable. She entered without invitation, perfume preceding her like armor. You shouldn't have involved the police, Margaret said coolly. Ava shut the door behind her. You shouldn't have sent a criminal into my apartment. Watch your tone, Margaret snapped. You don't understand what's happening. Then explain it, Ava said, motioning to the couch. Margaret sat, crossing one leg over the other. Your father's business dealings aren't simple. The papers you found don't belong to you. Ethan Hale was supposed to retrieve them quietly before you made things worse. Ava stared, stunned. You hired someone to break in because you couldn't just talk to me? Her mother's tone softened to that practiced maternal lilt. I was protecting you. There are things you don't need to know. No, Ava said evenly. You were protecting lies, not me. Margaret's mask cracked for the first time, anger flashing beneath. You think you're smarter than us? You have no idea what those documents could expose. Your father could lose everything. Ava's expression hardened. Good. Maybe it's time he did. The silence that followed was taut enough to snap. Margaret rose, pacing in front of her daughter, the click of her heels sharp against the wood floor. If those papers go public, our entire family's reputation will be destroyed. Ava didn't flinch. You already destroyed it when you forged my name on those property deeds. Margaret froze. The blood drained from her face. I found everything, Ava continued quietly. Transfers under my ID. Signatures that aren't mine. Even emails to Ethan. You didn't just lie. You built your empire on my name. Margaret's voice wavered. You were supposed to trust us. I did for 29 years, Ava said. And all it got me was debt, anxiety, and a lock changed by my brother. Her mother's composure fractured into disbelief. You wouldn't go to the police. You're not that cruel. Ava met her gaze steadily. You broke into my home, forged my identity, and risked my son's safety. Tell me, what would you call that? For the first time, Margaret Kincaid looked small, diminished under the weight of her own secrets. We did it to protect the family, she whispered. No, Ava replied softly. You did it to protect your image. Margaret turned toward the door, her voice trembling with fury. If you go through with this, you'll never have a family again. Ava's tone was calm, resolute. Then maybe it's time I build one worth having. The door shut behind Margaret with a sound that echoed like finality. Outside, thunder rumbled above the sound, rain streaking across the glass. But this time, the storm didn't scare Ava. It sounded almost like applause. She stood still for a long time, breathing in the quiet, as the lights of Seattle shimmered through the rain, promising that the truth had only just begun to unfold. The next morning, Seattle was unusually quiet. The storm had rolled out to sea, leaving behind wet streets glinting under a pale, forgiving light. Ava Kincaid sat by her window with a mug of untouched coffee, her gaze distant, heavy with the weight of everything she'd uncovered. She'd sent her mother away last night with words she could never take back. Yet, beneath the relief was a hollow ache, a strange grief for the idea of family she'd finally buried. Liam stirred in his room down the hall. His soft laughter broke through the silence as he talked to his stuffed fox, his small voice warm and grounding. For that sound alone, Ava found the strength to move. On the counter lay the manila folder she'd assembled overnight, copies of the deeds, bank transfers, and the photos of every falsified signature. The evidence that could end her parents' carefully curated world. At 9 a.m., her phone buzzed. "Grant, we need to talk. Come to the precinct when you can." When she arrived, Detective Caleb Grant was waiting by the lobby window, his expression unreadable. He gestured toward an empty interview room. "Ava," he said quietly once they Saturday, "we found something else this morning." Her chest tightened. "What now?" He slid a small plastic bag across the table. Inside was a flash drive, labeled only with her father's initials. "It was found in Ethan Hale's locker," Grant explained. "He claims he was paid not just to retrieve documents, but to destroy this. We've checked, it's encrypted, but our techs managed to access some of the files." Ava's fingers trembled as she picked it up. "What's on it?" Grant hesitated. "Financial ledgers. Offshore transfers tied to shell companies in your name. And one more thing, a video file." Her pulse skipped. "A video?" He nodded. "You should see it yourself." The laptop screen flickered to life. A timestamp appeared, March 18th, 2019. Then came the image of her father, Richard Kincaid, sitting in his home office. The camera seemed hidden, positioned low, its view slightly angled. Richard's voice filled the small room. "Margaret, if the auditors ever trace this back, we're finished. You understand that?" Her mother's voice followed, sharp and deliberate. "Then we make sure they don't. Put it under Ava's name. She owes us that much." Richard sighed. "She'll find out eventually." Margaret laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "By then, she'll be too busy thanking us for her inheritance to ask questions." The video ended abruptly. Ava's breath hitched. She stared at the frozen frame, her parents' faces, calm and calculated, illuminated by the camera's glare. "That was recorded by Hale," Grant said quietly. "He said your father hired him years ago for security upgrades. Apparently, Ethan kept certain files as leverage. He never expected your mother to turn on him." Ava's mind spun. So, she wasn't protecting anyone. She was cleaning up loose ends. Grant nodded grimly. "That's how it looks." Ava leaned back in her chair, her heartbeat drumming in her ears. Everything, the whisper at dinner, the break-in, the lies, had been part of a desperate attempt to erase the past. "Grant," she said finally, "what happens next?" He folded his hands. "We open a full federal investigation. Your parents will face charges for tax evasion, identity fraud, and falsified documents. But before we proceed, I need your official statement on record." Ava swallowed hard. The words came slow, deliberately. "I'll give it to you. Every detail." She spoke for nearly an hour, recounting everything from that night's dinner to the confrontation in her apartment. Grant listened without interruption, occasionally jotting notes. When she finished, his expression had softened. "You've been through a lot," he said. "I know it's not easy turning against your family." Ava met his eyes. "It's not about revenge. It's about freedom." He nodded. "And you'll get it." As she left the precinct, the morning light had shifted to a faint gold. For the first time in years, Ava felt the faint stirrings of something unfamiliar, relief without guilt. That evening, she picked up Liam from his after-school program. He ran into her arms, his backpack bouncing.
"Mom."
"Guess what?" I got a gold star for reading out loud. Ava laughed, spinning him once. I'm not surprised. You've always been my brightest star. As they drove home, Liam hummed softly in the back seat, tapping his fingers against the window. The sound was simple, but to Ava it was proof that life, real life, still existed beyond betrayal. Back home, she made dinner while Liam built a fort in the living room with cushions and blankets. The news hummed quietly in the background. Words like financial misconduct, embezzlement, and fraud investigation floated through the air. Her parents' names hadn't surfaced yet, but she knew it was only a matter of time. The doorbell rang around 8. Ava froze, half expecting another shadow from her past to appear. But when she opened it, Grant stood there, his jacket damp from drizzle, his eyes kind but serious. "Detective," she said, surprised. "You didn't have to come." "I thought you should hear this in person," he said, stepping inside. "Your father turned himself in this afternoon. Your mother hasn't." Ava's pulse jumped. "Hasn't? She's disappeared," Grant said. "We issued a warrant. Her phone's been off since noon. We think she may try to leave the country." Ava's hand tightened around the doorframe. "Of course she would." He hesitated before adding, "There's something else. Before your father surrendered, he gave us a statement. He said your mother forged more than your name. She also took out insurance policies under it, ones that would pay out in case of your death." Ava stared at him, the room spinning. "You're saying—" "She may have wanted to erase every link between you and those accounts," Grant said carefully. "Including you." The air turned thin. Ava forced a breath. "So the break-in wasn't just about documents. It was about me." Grant nodded once. "We'll keep a patrol near your building for the next few days. You're safe, Ava." But she's desperate, and desperate people don't think rationally. Liam's voice called from the living room. "Mom, can I show Detective Grant my fort?" Grant smiled faintly. "Go ahead, champ." As Liam proudly demonstrated his blanket fortress, Ava watched him with a trembling heart. The innocence of his laughter cut through the darkness like light through fog. She would never let her mother or anyone threaten that again. When Grant left, he paused at the door. "We'll find her. You have my word." Ava nodded, though her thoughts were already racing ahead. She didn't need the police to find Margaret Kincaid. She already knew where her mother would go. There was only one place her mother had ever run when cornered. The family's old lake housed 2 hours east of the city. It was remote, quiet, and still legally in her parents' name. And Ava intended to meet her there first. The road to the lake stretched through silent pine forests and mist-shrouded hills. Ava drove alone, headlights slicing through fog that moved like breath across the asphalt. The dashboard clock glowed at 10:47 p.m. Every instinct warned her to turn back, to wait for Grant and the backup he promised. But something deeper, older, compelled her forward. She had spent her life letting her mother's choices dictate her fate. Tonight, she intended to end that pattern. The cabin came into view just after 11, its weather-beaten frame standing at the edge of the frozen lake. The same place where her father used to teach her how to skip stones, where her mother used to smile only when cameras were pointed her way. Ava parked, killed the engine, and stepped into the cold. The night air bit at her cheeks. A single light burned inside the cabin. She walked to the porch, the wooden boards creaking beneath her boots. Her pulse thudded in her ears. When she pushed open the door, her mother was already waiting. Margaret Kincaid sat in the old armchair by the fireplace, wrapped in a dark coat. Her hair was loose, her expression oddly serene. Beside her sat an open suitcase and a passport. "So," Margaret said, her voice quiet but sharp, "you found me." Ava closed the door behind her. "You made it easy." Margaret smiled faintly. "You always were clever, though I hoped you'd use that for something other than betrayal." "Betrayal?" Ava stepped closer. "You forged my name, stole my future, and tried to erase me. I think the definition applies to you." Margaret's gaze didn't waver. "You have no idea what it takes to survive in this world. Your father and I built everything from nothing. We were never going to let it slip away because of one mistake." "One mistake?" Ava's voice broke. You made me an accomplice. You nearly got me killed. Margaret sighed, a sound full of weary disdain. You always dramatized everything. You were never meant to be part of the business. You were supposed to smile for the photos, marry well, stay quiet. Ava stared at her, this woman who had given her life but never loved. You really believe that, don't you? That control is the same as love. Margaret's expression faltered for the first time. Everything I did was for you. No, Ava whispered. Everything you did was for you. She set the flash drive on the table between them. The faint blue light from her phone illuminated it. This is what ends it. The ledgers, the video, everything. Grant has copies. You can't run from it anymore. For a moment, the silence stretched taut. Then Margaret stood slowly. You think you've won, Ava, but you haven't. You've destroyed our name. You've destroyed your father. He destroyed himself. Margaret's hand trembled slightly as she reached into her coat pocket. Ava stiffened, her eyes darting toward the movement, until Margaret drew out a small silver locket. Do you remember this? She asked softly. Ava blinked. It was the locket she'd worn as a child, the one she thought lost in a house fire years ago. Inside, a faded photograph of her as a toddler, laughing in her father's arms. I kept it, Margaret said, even when I wanted to forget everything. For a heartbeat, Ava saw something human flicker behind her mother's eyes, regret, or maybe just exhaustion. Then why? Ava asked, voice trembling. Why keep hurting us? Margaret turned toward the window, where snow had begun to fall. Because if I stopped moving, everything would collapse. The money, the image, the power, it was all that held us together. It's not holding anymore, Ava said quietly. Margaret gave a small, humorless laugh. I suppose not. Then, before Ava could react, her mother crossed the room and picked up the passport from the chair. You won't stop me, she said. You wouldn't dare risk Liam's safety by dragging this out. Ava's breath caught. You don't get to use him. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Then stay out of my way. Ava stepped forward, blocking the door. The air between them crackled with years of unspoken pain. You're not leaving, Ava said. Margaret's hand shook. You think you're stronger than me. I don't have to be stronger, Ava said softly. I just have to stop you once. Margaret's composure fractured. You'll regret this, Ava. Maybe, she whispered. But at least I'll be free. Outside, headlights cut through the trees. Sirens wailed in the distance, echoing across the frozen lake. Margaret turned sharply toward the sound. You called them? I didn't have to, Ava said. Grant's been tracking her phone since this morning. The first cruiser pulled into the clearing. Blue-red lights splashed across the cabin walls. Margaret's shoulders slumped. For the first time, she looked small, tired, almost fragile. She sank back into the chair, the passport slipping from her fingers. As officers entered, Margaret lifted her chin one last time, eyes meeting Ava's. You're just like me, she murmured. Ava shook her head. No. I'm finally not. The winter sun rose pale and clean over the Puget Sound. Ava stood on the balcony of her new apartment, watching ferries cut slow lines across the water. Liam slept inside, clutching his fox plush, safe. Her parents' trial date was set. Her father had agreed to cooperate with prosecutors, while her mother faced additional charges after attempting to bribe a customs officer. Ava didn't feel triumph, only a quiet, steady calm. The kind that comes when storms finally spend themselves. Grant had stopped by yesterday with updates. He'd asked if she was all right. She'd told him she was learning to be. He'd smiled, saying that was good enough. Now, as gulls wheeled above the harbor, Ava pulled the silver locket from her pocket. She'd kept it after all. Inside, the old photo still smiled back at her. A reminder that even broken families begin somewhere with hope. She closed it gently and whispered, We're done, Mom. Then she turned back inside, where sunlight pooled across the floor, warming the quiet home she'd rebuilt with her own hands. For the first time in years, the lock on her door was silent, and it was hers.